Hello and welcome to the TFF podcast by Fantasy Football Hub, our first episode of the 23-24 season as we talk all things Telegraph fantasy football. My name is Fergie and I'm joined as usual by two superb Telegraph fantasy managers. Firstly, Luke Wilson. Luke, have you had a nice summer?
Lovely, thank you. Yeah, all good, mate. Yeah, it's nice, switched off. It's very nice.
You either need to go on holiday or you need to go have a sunbath, mate. I would say, have you been abroad? Or if you have you been to like Iceland or somewhere? Or
No, we oh, God, it started already. Bloody hell! No, mate, we had a holiday in May, so we went to America in May, and we're off in October. So I'm just working
Glasgow,
through
is
the
it?
summer holidays and looking after the kids, mate. So
Good.
it's not conducive with getting a suntan.
How was have you missed the football? And how was your TFF
I've,
planning coming along?
I had a dreadful season last season in almost every format, so it's been lovely
Hmm.
not thinking about it. And I've spent this weekend was the first time I've really sort of focused on all the formats. So yeah, I'm quite looking forward to it now, actually.
Lovely and great to have you back, Luke. We have the Hub's resident statistician, Carl Weeks. Welcome back, Carl. How have things been with you?
Hi, both of you. It's great to be back. Things for me have been a bit up and down over the summer for a few personal issues, but to be honest, I'm really excited to get forward to the new season. Uh, Waiting for the big kickoff because the most nervous part is this week. It's like
It's,
million teams for all the fun, and are they going to start?
oh,
And it's like once they got that first kickoff, you can't do anything, and then it's like how do you react thereafter? But the season itself is probably going to be the most exciting
agree.
for the top half, all the top half positions up for grabs. So it's going to be a great season ahead, and fingers crossed that we can nail our fantasy football formats.
Indeed. Have you been on holiday, Carl, or have you been on the sunbeds?
No, I'm not a sunbed sort of person anyway. I can never sort of like just lie down and have the sun. But no, I haven't actually been on holiday this year.
Okay.
Maybe next year we'll be doing a bit of
Maybe
holiday,
next year
but
when you win TFF and you can spend your money on a lovely holiday, Carl.
that'd be the plan.
That would. For our YouTube watchers, if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure you do. This is also the Sky Fantasy Football, the channel as well. So please make sure you do subscribe and also press the like button if you enjoy our content. So what we're going to do again, as usual, for the first half of the pod is take a look back at last year, look at the point, look at the data. Carl, as usual, has prepared some fantastic stuff for us to dig into, which really helps us look at trends, look at maybe the structure of our team, maybe find a few enablers, maybe look at some players to target. So really, really good stuff as usual from Carl. And then in the second half of the podcast, as usual, we will look forward. We will share our players, our thoughts, and we will finish off with our current draft teams. With only 5 days to go, they must be pretty close to being finalised now. So we are getting there. Firstly, then, let's have a look at the total points scored for last season. I'll just run through the top through the top ones for each position. I'll just ask you your thoughts, guys, if that's okay. Allison and David Raya were top point scorers last year. Allison was 4.5 million. Raya was obviously only 3.6, made loads of saves. Nick Pope came in with 174 points at 4 million. Ramsdale came in at 163 points. And Leno for Fulham, probably quite surprisingly, came in with 157 points at just 3.4 million, which was really good stuff. In defence, Arsenal and Newcastle dominated for the vast majority, but Trent did climb up towards the end. But Trippier, top scorer with 162 points at just 4 million. Ben White, 153 points at 4 million. Trent snuck in there third, 150 points, 5.5 million. He's very, very expensive again this year. Gabriel, 146 points at 3.9. And then maybe surprisingly, the next two or three, Ben Mee for Brentford's got 140 points. He's only 3.1 this year. Fabian Schär, 139 points, 3.5. And Estupinan, 135 points. Looking at midfield, Saka, 201 points. Absolutely superb performance from him. He's 5.7 million this year. Bruno Fernandes, 198 points, 6.3. Martinelli, 185. I think he's underpriced this year at 4.8. I'm sure we'll touch on him later. Kevin De Bruyne, 181 points, 6.7. Odegaard, 177, 5.1. The next one really surprised me. Pascal Gross, 176 points at just 3.7 million. No wonder his ownership is quite high at the moment. And finally, just look at the forwards. Unsurprisingly, Erling Haaland, top of the shop, 293, with a new premium price tag. I don't think we've seen this before in Telegraph. £8 million. Fully justified and deserved. Well done, the Telegraph. I think it's a really good move. Harry Kane, 253 points, 7.5. Salah, 216.7.2. Rashford is a forward, again, 5.9 million. Ivan Toney, obviously, we won't be looking at him for a while. He scored 167 points at 5.2 million. But they're just the kind of top scorers there. Carl, if I can come to you first on your kind of thoughts, I suppose, on overall on the top point scorers for last season and what we can take away ahead of this season.
Yeah, well, when you sort of like go through the list, the most interesting thing I think is for midfielders and the strikers, the names you reel off are all the names on people's lips anyway. Yeah. They're the big ticket items.
Yeah, they are.
Haaland, Kane, Saka, Bruno, etc., etc. But when you go to the more defence, it's a bit more of a mixed bag. Yes, you've got Alisson, top goalkeeper, but you've got the much cheaper ones challenging those top positions. And you mentioned Leno of Fulham. And don't forget, he also missed a few matches at the beginning because he was still at Arsenal, if I recall correctly. So may have had a few more points if he played the whole season at Fulham. You don't know. And also, as you sort of like mentioned, in the defence, it's a very abnormal year, or it seemed abnormal last year, and that's why you may have had the cheaper non-premium clubs up near the top, and they look a lot more better value this year than they would have done in previous years. So in previous years, I'd been sitting here saying 5 at the back, or Liverpool, Man City, those are the defenders to go through. Last year, their clean sheets were lower, and secondly, I think there's a lot of rotation or see if it felt that way on the Man City. Who was going to play from 1 week to the next, and I don't see that changing this year. So when I've done a little bit of analysis, my recommendation is going to be few at the back this year, probably 3 at the back. And they're probably the place to look for enablers or the cheap ones to afford more expensive forwards, which is against normal wisdom, that I would sort of call it. And that's assuming that we played the same this year as happened in previous years. But I do think that will be a good way to go. Even if you would make some adjustments for the top teams reverting a little bit more to the expectation, as I'd call it.
Yeah, really good stuff there, Carl. I think I agree. Every time we've done this podcast, we have always said, and the data's backed it up, having it all the time. 5 at the back, load up at the back, expensive defenders, enablers in midfield. Don't spend lots in attack. Maybe get Kane or Salah potentially, but it completely flipped on its head last year. Luke, what are your thoughts on that? And do you think the trend will continue? And why is this, do you think?
Right, I just said we should probably record this, right? The game's a value game. That's my starting position. I think I'll go through all the positions because I think the keepers, like Alisson is brilliant because he saves or they'll get clean sheets. So he's probably the only keeper that I think is worth the real big price.
Yeah.
But I think with Lloris moving on and Vicario coming in, I think there's a 2.5 playing keeper there, so that's where I'll be looking because of the save points. And I don't expect Spurs to be amazing or anything, but I just think the drop of 2 million is so valuable.
Yeah.
So I think I'm going to take the keepers off. It's either going to be Alisson or Vicario for me, or another sub 3 million keeper for me. So I think Neto's in there as well. And Henderson, if he moves, it could be an option. And I think the rule change has sort of slightly flipped things, that there's now a lot more value in the midfield, particularly for those who win the tackles. And it is still a value game. So I'm still going to stand by. I don't really want more than one, most two strikers. So I'll be bouncing sort of potentially Salah, Kane if he stays, Bruno, KDB, sort of Rashford, those sort of people. So those names are there, but I just don't. They're value when they're on form, but I don't think they're at all value if they're not on form. Whereas I'm looking down the defender list. You've got Gabriel's pretty well priced. He's under 4 million. Ben Mee, I mean, it's the Malbronk effect, unglamorous team, but he'll probably be about those points again. And this is the great thing about the game is you can pick up people who are getting as many points as an Arsenal defender, win 8 less. Gabriel probably will outscore him, but probably not by that much. And that's sort of plays. Esther Keenan, I'm pronouncing it terribly badly. He could be great value as well. But I think with the rule change, people like Gross, who's previously a midfielder, I think he's classed as a midfielder again, but he's now playing further back, which means he's going to get more tackles. I think that works better for him. Whereas someone like Trent, who's arguably going to be playing as more in midfield this season than he did previously, is going to go against him because he's not going to get those tackle points. Mm. So I think there's a bit of a flip there. So I'd probably rather own Gross than Trent, which is bonkers. Albeit Trent may pick up more attacking points, but as a defensive midfielder, is he really going to get more than an attacking right back? I'd probably say possibly not, but I'm sure we'll have a debate on that. But I think it's really interesting, and I think they've actually upped the price of the slightly more glamorous defensive midfielders. So they all seem to be, they've probably all moved up about 0.4 million, so that they were all sort of in that 2.6 to 3.1. They all seem to be sort of low threes to mid threes this season, which is quite good. So they seem to have adjusted that slightly. But going for value for money, both defence and midfield, I would put the argument that you could pick up value players in either, whereas previously it's always been chuck the value in defence. So I think there's a lot of value in midfield, there's a lot of value in defence. It's just where do you want to spend the budget, because there's a lot of cheapish players in that sort of 3 million mark.
I completely agree. What's your take, Carl, on the pricing this year? I got to say I found it pretty. I wouldn't say easy. I can't get too. Well, I can get two premiums because I think Bruno's a premium now, only at 6.3. But I found it reasonably straightforward to build a team that I'm very, very happy with. What are your thoughts on that? On how easy it is to build a team.
Well, it's like everything. If you know what to do, it's easy. If you don't, it's hard. It's as Luke was sort of saying, and I agree with him. It is a value game, and it's about using your resources in the most efficient way. I think me and Luke will disagree where that may be, because historically it's always been one striker for Luke, and I've been pretty much big at the back all the time. And I flipped for this year, as you'll see when my team comes out. You went through the list and Luke mentioned the keepers. Now, when I did some analysis, and you may come to some slides later, the right thing to do is to pick in my view, is to pick a cheap keeper. Neto, Luke mentioned, and there'll be a few others around the 2.5 to 2.8 region. And there's quite a few of them, and they're all worthwhile, and they all score really, really well. And as soon as if that's the route you go down, you don't have to pick up many enablers to suddenly get be able to fit in all the premiums that you desire. So yeah, I find it, I think, quite easy once I listened to the people who are in the WhatsApp group. There's been a couple of names that have come up, and that you do a voice note, and you mentioned like Jackson, which I'm sure we'll come up to, Chelsea striker. And, once you sort of put him in and you sort of save all that money, then you can pick up a really, really good team, in my eyes anyway.
Yeah, I agree. We've now just moved on the slide. We've now got the top points per million scorers for last year, which is interesting. So we're talking about sort of value. Looking in goal, we've mentioned Raya and Lano. For those who haven't seen, Spurs' new keeper Vicario, who started, I think, vast majority, if not all, of Spurs pre-season's games. as coming at 2.5 million. Now, don't expect Spurs to keep as many clean sheets potentially as as like City and Liverpool and Arsenal and stuff, but as kind of Luke and Carl alluded to, he should get saves. He will keep some clean sheets, and the 2.5 million saving on Alisson, even like like a 1.5 million saving on someone like Pope and things, the ability to push that forward is crazy, really. So yeah, I think I kind of agree with you guys. Well, I agree with Luke. Kind of Alisson or Alisson or Vicario. I'm sure there'll be points in the season if we do have kind of excess money in the bank. If one or two enablers really emerge that is so obvious to get, and when there is money, and Liverpool go on a run of 8 games where Spurs have 3 or 4, it may be worth going to Alisson. But Vicario looks good for the time being. Looking at points per million for defender, we already mentioned Ben Mee. Fulham again, surprisingly, Robinson and Tete are there. They're both really cheap. Trippier was up there at 4 million. I'm not sure he can maybe repeat his feats of last year. They went on this ridiculous run of clean sheets. I'm not sure he'll do that again.
We dropped off as well. Second half of the season, his assists all dried up, so he kept getting clean sheets. But yeah, the first half of that season, he was getting an assist every other game. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, it was. Shah 3.5. Estupinian, we mentioned 3.4. So Brentford, Newcastle, Fulham, Rico Henry at 3 million. Lewis Dunk, Arsenal players. Not a Man City or Liverpool, or Chelsea or whatever defender in sight. Absolutely, incredible, really. Which again, if we think that this season is going to follow a similar trend, maybe these are the teams we should be looking for. João Palhinha, what a legend. A lot of us jumped in on him really early. Even at like Christmas, he was only 4% owned, but his tackles were absolutely insane. We'll touch on the tackles in a bit, but 155 points for his 3.1 million was insane value, and anyone who jumped on him early had a massive jump on their rivals. Gross, as we mentioned, 3.7. Solly March in the second half of the season was absolutely fantastic, wasn't he? I've got my eye on him. He's only 3.5 million still, 161 points. Alexis McAllister was also superb for Brighton. Obviously moved to Liverpool now. Not really sure how that's going to affect his output, but he's still cheap at 3.8. A couple of other names which really surprised me. Jensen for Brentford scored 145 points, which I just find absolutely incredible. Just went completely under the radar. And he's still cheap now this season, 3.4 million. Absolutely crazy. Morgan Gibbs White, 3.2 million, scored 134 points. And then you go down a little bit more. Mitoma's there, 3.6 million, 144 points. Martinelli, 4.8. He's cheap again. Eze, I'm sure Carl, you'd be interested to talk about Eze at 3.8 million. And then looking at the forwards, Brennan Johnson, Dwight McNeil, I can't get really excited about those. Brian Mbomo, 141 points, 2.8 million. If he's playing up front this year, bear in mind he got the a lot of those points. He played the vast majority of the season with Ivan Toney, who's not there anymore. So there's an opportunity for Mbomo, 3.8 million forward, to do really, really well. Haaland up there, still up there, value for money at 8 million. Awani cheap, Kane and Rashford up there. The one that's not on here, as Carl alluded to, is the new Chelsea forward Nicholas Jackson. And Kunku has come in at 5.6 million, but for whatever reason, Nicholas Jackson is coming at 3.8 million, which seems pretty wild. Not really sure why he's gone in at that price, because it looks like he may start the season for Chelsea as the number 9, and if he kicks on, he's going to be in everyone's teams. But yeah, that's just a look at points per million, looking at the value players. Luke, does anything stand out for you there, or maybe which affect like certain players or the value of your team, like where you're going to spend your money?
It's really interesting because you could have a very unglamorous backline. I mean, the Fulham boys they're established now in the Premier League, arguably, and at that sort of price, that's very, very good value. And I think what's interesting for me, I mean, this is always the challenge with Telegraph that you don't get with Sky or FPL. It's the bright lights of those big star names Like you'll notice in the midfield, Saka's not in that midfield list of whatever it is, top 10, 20 or top 25, but he's in almost, well, he's in over half the teams. So Haaland, even at 8 million, looks good value if he continues. And it's probably worth noting he didn't play probably arguably 5 of the last 10 games because they'd sewn it up by then. So he didn't play all those games. But yeah, it's very interesting. There was a thought that occurred to me though when we were looking at this slide and the previous slide. In pretty much every season I can remember, there's been a few defenders that have got close to 200 points, and I think it's Trips was a top scorer at 162. So if you did chuck in, I don't know, Chilwell or James, if he could stay fit, or Trent or Robbo or VVD, who have historically hit those really high figures, that makes a big difference. And I mean, if you took Cancelo at halfway, I mean, he's not there. I've seen something like ridiculous, like 9% of teams have got Cancelo in it, which is just bonkers. Please sell him if you've got him. But but I think that's the thing that's missing. And I guess just to make a point, we were chatting earlier, and I'm not sure how it's going to work out. And I think you've got a view on this, but with the extra time, I mean, we've seen it in the championships today. I mean, like they were talking on the radio yesterday, like the games were running into 13, 14 minutes of injury time. And it's like, well, what the logical thing, I guess, is that clean sheets are going to dry up. But the flip side to that is with those extra minutes played, people are likely to get more passes, more tackles. And I know it's only tackles for this game, but that could have an impact as well. So those tackling players are probably more likely to get the tackles because they're going to have another 7-8 minutes more than they would normally have. And I think you made the point earlier that may mean that we get less clean sheets. I'm not completely sold on that, but
look at the Community Shield earlier. If it would have been a normal amount of injury time, Man City would have won 1-0 as it is. They had a clean sheet bust in the, what was it, 101st minute, was it, or something?
Yeah.
It's
going to be interesting. Another weird season.
It is indeed. What's your take on that, Carl, with the added sort of stoppage time, isn't it? Not injury time now, stoppage time. Do you think it's going to have an impact?
Well, yeah, it's as you mentioned, the case in point today, Man City, Arsenal, goal in late into injury time by Arsenal, cancelling a clean sheet. So there'll be quite a lot of clean sheets that will get busted in the last minute, goals scored in the last 10 minutes of injury time. There's a shame I can't remember when it was announced about this all extra time, but even over the last 3 or 4 days, I've seen the number of goals on the betting markets go up by over 20 goals this season.
Oh, wow, really?
And that was just over the weekend. So, well, you say that, oh, really? It's only 20 goals. And I think that the line is just under 1,100 goals. Okay. That's how many goals we'd expect. So put it into context. It's not like a huge number.
2%.
Yeah.
Roughly.
Yeah. But that is still quite considerable if someone gets a fair share. And I'd imagine that the teams that will take advantage will be the better teams as well. And you may also find out it may be a player that may get rested and come on as a sub will have an extra 10 minutes of playing time to score against very tired defences. So I think it will benefit the top clubs more than the smaller clubs.
Yeah, and I think again, everything we're talking about is kind of lending itself to 3 at the back, isn't it? I don't know. Like everything we've all said so far, we haven't given one reason yet for let's go all in expensive defence at the back, like we have done, very successfully year on year on year, apart from last year. Is that your take at the moment, Carl?
So even given the pricing and the numbers based on last year, I've moved away. So my team was picked on before the changes, and I'm still 3 at the back. And I think the optimal team is 3 at the back. With these changes and the expected extra goals, I would sort of say that just makes it much more of a stronger case to go down that route. Whereas previously you could argue that it's pretty even between all formations.
Yeah.
I think this just shoves it much more in that direction. I'm not quite sure about the saves bonus. You may get a few more saves. I'm not sure about the tackles because people get a bit tired at then, so they may pick up more yellow cards or red cards, especially the tacklers, as their legs tire out a bit. But we'll just have to wait and see on that.
Interesting stuff. And just for completeness, we've got the points per game. Points per million per game's up now, which also brings in the players who didn't have many minutes. But some interesting ones here. Neto and Henderson were top of the keepers. Steele also at 3 million has come in 78 points. He's one who interests me as well. Top of defenders, interestingly, was Moreno for Aston Villa at just 2.9 million. He scored very, very well in the time which he played. Now, he is injured at the moment for the first 2 or 3 games of the season, but I get the feeling he could be a very, very interesting asset. I fancy Villa to have a really good season this season. So Moreno at that price is really, really good. 3 Brentford defenders just after, like, it's Brentford everywhere, right? And they're just so cheap. Aya for Brentford. Ethan Pinnock at 2.8 and Roeslav. They did hold, especially Aya and Roeslav have lesser minutes, but they're in there. Badia Shield for Chelsea, if he nails down a starting spot at 3.1 million. We haven't mentioned Colwill yet, who obviously played for Brighton last year. Didn't get many minutes, but is playing for Chelsea. It looks like he might start the season. He is just 2.9 million this year, which is pretty crazy, really, considering, we'd expect Chelsea to definitely improve, and a 2.9 million could be an absolute steal. Looking at some midfielders, for those who didn't play many minutes, Danilo for Forest is only 2.3 million, and he did really well whenever he played. Tavernier for Bournemouth, he is injury prone, but at 2.7 million again, if he gets a run, he can do really, really well. Polinia and March are next, as expected, and then for the forwards, Awonyi at 2.7 million scored 95 points. If he gets a run of games again at 2.7 million, if you're looking to really scrape the barrel, he could do a job up front. He'll get a goal every 3, or kind of whatever it is. And Reece Nelson, Arsenal, who barely played. Dwight McNeil for Everton. I don't know why he's a forward in this game, but he did well whenever he played. And Brennan Johnson there as well. I think the interesting ones there for me, the most interesting one is Moreno for Villa at 2.9. Colwell isn't on here. He'd be on there as well. Luke, anything else sort of catch your eye on this?
No, I mean, it's a couple of things. So Moreno, you'll see later, is hardly owned at all. So real differential. I'm completely with you on the Villa side of things. I think they could be very good. There's a couple of other people that are on my radar from Villa, which you'll see on my team and later on. I mean, I think there's a couple of players on this list that are really, really interesting, actually. And if they nail down that spot, and you mentioned some of them earlier, it's going to be really interesting on that front. The other thing I was going to say is I did the same thing I did last year. So I looked at all of the budget enablers and looked at a team that you could get with that. And albeit I didn't have Haaland up front because I had 3.8 forwards, or that range of forwards. I had almost 15 million in the bank. And I looked at the team and went, that's actually not that bad, which just, again, coming from the value. And I think I shared it in the last pod that the team that I did that with, I used less transfers and almost did it. I ended up overtaking it finally very late on in the season, but almost was my highest scoring team of the 3 teams I entered last year. So there is a part of me that thinks I might just go that way again with 9 real budget players and stick in Haaland just because I know he's going to be there, and just sort of jump on those the players that are absolutely on fire straight away. It's intrigued me a little bit, but I think all of these value ones, these are the sorts of ones you really want to be looking at. Sooner you can get them, if they're nailed, the better. I think that's my advice. So don't hold transfers if it prevents you getting a Moreno and he's on fire at that price. Just get him in don't worry about 2-for-1s. Get him in early, because over the season at 2.9, he'll be phenomenal value, and there'll be others on that list.
Agree. Anything to add there, Carl?
No, not really. The one thing that I would sort of say about this list, because you mentioned about limited minutes, the benefit of this list is that you'll get players that don't appear in the other two lists and are there because they've had injury or they got transferred in at January. So like the top three keepers, they didn't play the full season, but you'd expect them to be regulars. And the striker that you mentioned last year, I think he was your Fergie's punch, or the value player that could have been a surprise last year because he's like 2.1, and he had a terrible start to the season because he wasn't selected, if I remember rightly.
Yeah.
And then he eventually got into the team and he scored very well. So yeah, it's a good place to fish if you're looking for some good value picks if you haven't found them elsewhere.
Agree. Let's have a look at the bonus points for last year. Some really interesting stuff here. David Raya for Brentford got 155 saves, 65 bonus points for that, which is obviously why he finished so well. Question about Brentford keeper. It looks like Raya may be off to Arsenal by the look of it. Flecken, who they brought in, is 2.9 million. Do you think, given the profile of Brentford, that Flecken can score well? Because he is certainly interested in me. I don't know if you guys know much about it, but Raya is obviously a superb keeper. They kept a lot of clean sheets. He made a lot of saves. He made 155 saves. Do you think Flecken can cover Raya, or at least provide as good value? Carl, what do you think about that?
Yeah, it's quite an interesting one. I'm not really a goalkeeper coach, so I can't sort of like say for definite this, that, or other. But I like Brighton. My understanding is Brentford are very analytical on their approach, and I'd imagine that they would have a keeper that will be of the same quality. Now, saying that, when I saw, I don't know if you watched any of the matches, Premier League matches in America, whatever it's called, and I didn't think he looked very good. But
I think you're being generous there.
but these friendly games, and it's like, we all make mistakes. Your concentration's not the same. The defense may be in different positions. So to me, friendly games are getting the minutes up. I'd be very surprised if that's a reflection on his true ability. And when the season starts, he will be. I would have no qualms of putting him in my team, just because I would trust the background staff of Brentford that they've got a decent keeper. So yeah, I don't have any qualms putting him in if you fancy it.
Yeah, agree with that. Leno was second with 148 saves, 63 points. Pickford made 128 saves for 50 points. Alisson, they kept a bunch of clean sheets at the end of the season, but he also made 114 saves, 47 points. Fabianski as well. And then there's the rest. It's worth saying Edison out of, unsurprisingly, Edison out of the regular starting keepers only made 46 saves, only 10 bonus points. He's probably not worth having as a TFF asset. That's probably fair to say. Looking at the tackles, which is a bit more interesting. João Palhinha, as we said, 163 tackles, got 70 points just from tackles. Moses Caicedo, who knows where he's going to be at the start of the season, but way behind on 106, 45 tackle points. Casemiro is probably the one who's interested me. 104. He didn't start the season there, did he? Or, he certainly didn't play the first opening few games. Still made 104 tackles. What was that, sorry, Carl?
20. Well, it's 28 matches he started.
Yeah.
For those 104.
Yeah, and if and he missed the start of the season, and he missed a bunch of games because of red cards, didn't he? So if he's getting 104 tackles, and he's only played 2/3 of the season, 3.8 million. He also gets goals and assists as well. I think he's a pretty good option in this format. Idrissa Gueye for Everton, legend from the past. only 3.1 million, 96 tackles, got 40 bonus points. Bruno Fernandes is the one who interests me because this is why this is not only why, but why he's in my team. He's very expensive this year, 6.3 million, but he's also a tackle machine, 83 tackles, an extra 31 bonus points. He's in my team this year, that's for sure. And then a few more there as we go down. Jens, who mentioned earlier for Brentford, 3.4 million, 74 as well. In terms of these sorts of players, we've got another two players in particular, maybe to talk about on the next one, where we look at the promoted teams, which are interesting. But Luke, can I just ask you first, in terms of the bonus points, how much do these sort of stats do you take into account when choosing your keeper and midfielders?
Very, very, very important. I mean, you mentioned Edison. The reason he's off my radar, he keeps a load of clean sheets, but he gets no saves. So there's just value. That's why Alisson is so good comparatively, because he will get saves and clean sheets. I think it's more of interest in the midfield space, because, like I said earlier, I mean, there are probably 10 midfielders that I would happily have as a midfield five, and that doesn't touch on anybody that anybody really knows. You know, there's no Saka. I mean, Bruno, yes, arguably, but you don't have your Sakas, you don't have your Martinellis, and Maddison and Bowens and all of that. None of them are featuring, and they're so much more expensive. So it does free up. I mean, it's getting the balance right and getting those players up front. So, I mean, you'll see later. I mean, I've got Salah at the moment, but I'm toying with Salah or Bruno is a choice, and that determines where I've got one other differential. But there is an argument in my head where I'm going to start with Saka. He's going to be in there. I think he's just going to kick on again. But the other four midfield slots, I could end up with an average of probably 3.2 across those four, or I could go really expensive. The one that's really interesting for me is Declan Rice, actually. So I think he's very kindly priced at 3.8, and he gets tackles, but he is going to score more goals and get more attacking points. So at 3.8, I mean, I think Casemiro and Declan Rice are very much under the radar in this game, and I think both of them are players who will get tackles, will score points, and I think they're very, very favourably priced. But if you're going to go in that route, there's you've got that going up is very hard. So I think if you get them on your team structure, you've just got to kind of go, right, they're in and that's it. I'm not transferring them out until 3-for-1s or 4-for-1s, but otherwise you're going to have to stick with them. Whereas if you go really high or really low, there's a bit, you're playing around with the budget a bit more. But it's very interesting.
It is. Carl, any hot takes from the bonus points?
No, I just thought Declan Rice is going to be an interesting one. But yes, I think he obviously will score more goals. But he's moving into a completely different type of team from West Ham, who would tend to sort of sit back, and his job would be to shield and to tackle. And West Ham, not a possession team, go into a much more dominant team in the league, in Arsenal, who should have a greater percentage of possession. And therefore, I think his tackles will come down, but we'll have to wait and see. I don't like these bonus points are very valuable, and to me, they just come part of the overall picture, and that's why for the cheaper goalkeepers, these make them so valuable. And for enablers, this is what you look for the really cheap players that are out there. Bruno's a bit of a bonus, but that's probably reflected in his price. Yeah. But to find the little gems that nobody else has seen, who's cheap to enable you, and because they pick up all these bonuses that people may not know about, and you may look at those on teams that get promoted, which I'm sure we'll come on to in a slide or two.
We've got one or two coming up, haven't we, Carl? I can't wait. I can't wait for that. Just finally, our kind of our look back for last season. We've got the optimum team. So this is the team. The one on the left-hand side is the optimum team using last season's points with this year's prices. So this has got David Raya in goal. It's a 3-5-2. Raya in goal, me, Trippier, Ben White, and then a midfield of Alexis McAllister, Saka, Palhinha, Gross, and March. So there were 3 Brighton midfielders in there, and then Haaland and Kane up front. So the profile of that is, reasonably cheap at the back. One cheap keeper, so a keeper makes lots of saves. Cheap defender from Brentford. Trippier and Ben White were probably kind of middling in terms of price. 1 premium midfielder, 1 bonus machine, and then 3 kind of all-rounders then in McAllister, Gross and March, and the 2 big hitting forwards up front in Haaland and Kane. And the one on the right-hand side, Carl, how does this differ again, sorry? Or the second team is set in Neto in goal. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah. It's only because Neto missed so much of the.
I see.
So I wanted to sort of see how it would change the profile of the other 10 players by putting Neto in goal.
And the only thing it really changed was it replaced McAllister with Martinelli. That's the only other change in it. So this is kind of like a Vicario price. This is maybe the profile of the team which would have done really well last year. So I love looking at this because it's so interesting of what the optimal team would have been, and these teams would have scored 2,000 points without any transfers. So, really interesting there in terms of the profile and the price points. Let's have a look now. Let's look ahead to this coming season. So we've looked back, we've looked at all the data. I've certainly learned an awful lot, Carl. Thank you so much for that. And thank you, Luke, for all your kind of input and insight there. But let's have a look forward now. We've got the first 10 fixtures up for each of the teams. I'm not sure how much fixtures play into your guys, into how you look to set your team up. I think for me, because this game's such a long-term game, I don't let it dominate my thinking. But when there is a 50-50, for example, so say we're tossing up between Salah and Bruno, for example, those opening few games for Man United are much better, in my opinion, for Man United rather than Liverpool. So maybe that's kind of my thinking. But in terms of players that we are thinking, it's like teams and players that we're thinking about for our teams this year. Carl, if I can come to you first, where is your head at completely in terms of teams and players you're targeting this year?
Well, I think it comes in 2 types of phases. There's some player. Well, so originally I've had a team and I had Kane in it, and then because of Nicholas Jackson, who we've mentioned, and being able to swap them around, Spurs having pretty difficult fixtures, and I don't even know if Kane's going to be here at the beginning of the year. I've had a good look at the fixtures, and it has persuaded me to go after certain teams to start with for the first 8 weeks, and then that'll give me opportunities to evaluate other players.
Yeah.
There could be some players that you may sort of wish to take a punt on, but why take a punt on if they got difficult fixtures? Why don't you just sort of wait a little bit of time and then sort of a bit later on down the track go for them? But 3 teams I think I would keep my eye on for this year is Chelsea, who I'm quite happy to put in players at the start because they've got a good, tough opening fixture, but they've got a good 7 thereafter. Aston Villa, I think, are going to be very good this year.
Really?
Got a hard set of fixtures, so so why gamble in them? I can't remember. So out of the first 8, 5 of them are away, and they haven't got the easiest of the 8 anyway. And the third team that I would look out for is Bournemouth. I think Bournemouth will do pretty well this year relative to what people's expectations may be of them. So I think they'll have some good gems within their team, but I don't know who, and that will sort of wait. But yeah, so my focus is going to be on much more of the fixtures because you've got Arsenal, 5 from 8 at home in the first day, Man United 5 from 8 at the beginning, and Chelsea. So those are the types of teams I'll be focusing on, and then it's just a matter of which players are likely to be available that are cheap, and those will come in phase two. When you see my team later, I've got about 3 or 4 cheap ones, but they come from those teams. And I know that everybody's keen on that Luton centre midfielder, but there's going to be other players that are going to come out. There's rumours that what's he called from Chelsea? Is it Lewis Hall?
Yeah,
He may come. He may
Palace.
come to. Yeah, and he's 2.3 in midfield.
Yeah,
and that will be a steal because he would either play on the wing or he's going to cover at left back and get tackles.
Yeah.
So if something like that occurs, so it's like, yeah. So I'm much more fixture based and cheapish at the back, and then just sort of, well, trying to pick a few value players and then spending most of my budget up top.
It's probably worth adding as well that Everton have 5 of their first 8 at home as well, and Brentford have, I think they have the same, or they definitely have 4 of the first 6 at home as well. So I kind of agree with you, Carl. I don't think we see this very often at the start of the season, but there's an awful lot of teams who've got an awful lot of home games, and obviously there are teams that are suddenly got a lot of away games. So to me, it doesn't make sense. If you've got a 50-50, you may as well go for the home games rather than the away games. And and as it happens, teams like, especially Arsenal, we've already touched on Brentford, Man United, Brighton. These have all got they're good teams with good home fixtures, and that's where I'll certainly be looking as well.
Yeah, and that's what I'm doing. So I've got some players who I had in my original draft, and then I've looked at the fixtures for. I would just like Gibbs White of Notts Forest.
Yeah,
I think it's a great player to have, great value. But they've just got such a horrible run of fixtures, and it's like, why put them in now? Like normally, I would sort of say, "Here's my 11 for the season," and I'll just sort of switch around. But I think I can, with the way some of the top teams, I've got 5 and 5, 5 out of 8 at home, and relatively good fixtures. Let's start off with a strong team, get a good start, and then evaluate how everybody else is getting on, and then so that takes you up, I think, to the second international break, the first 8.
And even then, we can use 3, 4, 5 sort of transfers, right, and completely find those enablers, find the people who are on form, look at the fixture swings, and then and before you know it, you're a quarter of the season in, and you've only used 5, 6, 7 sort of transfers overall, haven't you? So I think it's very well set up for that strategy personally as well.
Yeah.
Luke, what's your thoughts on how to attack the start of the season?
Telegraph's an interesting game for this. So I am generally fixtures over form is always been my default
and me
style.
Old school, mate.
Oh, I know. Well, you used to have to in Telegraph when you had 6 transfers a season. That's how old I am again. I think with the way I play the Telegraph game, that I look at the first half of the season as I want to make as few transfers as I possibly can. The only transfers if I know Luton and Burnley are missing a game, so there might be a double down the line. I might make a transfer if I get a 3-for-1 on a budget enabler. Then both teams have some really good price people, so that I might do a transfer for. But I think the majority of my transfers are only going to be for really premium assets swapping to another premium where the fixtures change. Or it's to get that amazing value player that's 2.1 or 2.3 or something that just you've got to get on early to have a chance of doing really well. So I think the fixtures are important. I mean, Arsenal, I'm very keen on the Arsenal attack, less keen on the Arsenal defence, which is ironic because I've got more defenders than attackers from Arsenal. I think Man United and Liverpool are the other two where I'm loading up. I want to make sure I get those fixture runs. But the problem with Liverpool is they've got 6 strikers or 5 strikers that are all good going into 3 positions.
I don't really like their fixtures start off with Liverpool. I think their first 8 are really tough. I think after that they're superb, but I'm not keen on them personally. I don't
know. I mean, yeah. I mean, I'm like I said, my debate is Salah versus Bruno, and I just don't know where I'm going to end up on that. The team
Bruno.
that I am interested in, particularly then they're coming out third on this, is Everton. So I think with Dyche there, they are going to be very, very defensive minded compared to where they were. He's not Lampard, so they will win the odd game. They might draw the odd game. They probably won't lose as many. And I think with their fixtures, they're quite favourably priced. But there's not that many players in the Everton team that I'm like, oh, I really want them. There is one that I'm very interested at the back, and I'll come on to that later. But I think, again, that's watch and see, because their strikers could be really interesting because they're not that expensive. And if they do start actually looking quite good and their midfielders are picking up more tackles and stuff, they could be quite interesting. But yeah, I mean, overall, I think because I'm aiming to not make any real transfers for the first up until sort of Christmas period, so probably the first 15, 16 games, I'm less worried about the fixtures. Yes, if a team's got a big run of home games and those home games are easier, that probably will sway a 50-50 between two players in that 2.8, 2.9 region. But yeah, I'm intending to not use those transfers. The fixtures become a lot more important second half of the season for me.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I think where I sit on it, I think they just help me on 50-50s. I'll definitely set my team up for the long term, but I do want to get off to a good start as well. And I think that the kind of players we're looking at, it kind of allows you to do that. Like, there's good teams with good fixtures, specifically, as we said, Arsenal, Man United and Brighton especially have got a lot of home fixtures. They've got really good players, some really cheap players as well, and that's where I'm kind of looking to start off, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. I do a bit of a short list every podcast, so I'm going to go through my short list of players now for the ones which I like for the coming season. It's not very short. It's more like Fergie's long list, but we'll have a go. And I'll go through each position and just give a tiny bit of commentary on who I think. So for the keepers, the list I pulled out players who I think are worth kind of worthy of looking at. Alisson 4.5, we've already mentioned him. The new United keeper Onana at 4.1 million. De Gea has historically done really well on this game. I think 4.1 million Onana is pretty decent, expecting to make a lot of saves. Also make a lot of boo-boos, but 4.1 is not bad. Leno at 3.4, we've touched on Leno already. Steele at Brighton at 3 million, I think is really good value. Johnston at Palace, 2.9 million. Finished the season as a number one. I think he's quite cheap. I fancy Palace to do well. Be interesting to hear what Carl thinks about that. After I finish, Flecken, we've touched on him at 2.9 million. We think he's going to be the new Brentford keeper. Really, really cheap that is. And Vicario at Spurs, we touched on him as well. It looks like he's going to be the number one, 2.5 million. In kind of order of that, I think Vicario looks a bit of a no-brainer, but I do think Flecken at 2.9 is decent as well. And I think Alisson at 4.5, but I don't think we need to go with Alisson, especially seeing Liverpool's fixtures at the start are not the best. In terms of defenders, I think Trent, for me, be interesting to get your guys' views in a bit, but 5.5 million for me, I don't think he's worth it. I've had him in my team. I've looked at the ownership. His ownership is quite high, but I don't think I'm going to go with him. Other players I think could be good value to start with. Chilwell, 4.7 million. Looks like he's back in the team. Plenty of goals, plenty of assists. Should be keeping plenty of clean sheets as well. I would only go for Chilwell if I had spare money. I would say we've kind of already said that we think that the value is in defence in terms of looking at cheaper ones. Stones at 4.5, I think could be decent. Luke Shaw is 4.3. Trippier is 4. Ben White is 4. Akanji is the cheapest, likeliest starting City defender at 4 million. Just don't think he's going to start. Gabriel for me at 3.9 for Arsenal. He's currently in my team. I just think they're really, really cheap. I think Arsenal will do well again this season. He also had the second highest amount of shots on target last year as well for all defenders. Martinez for Man United is 3.8. Pedro Porro is 3.7 for Spurs. I think he could be decent, not to start with, but later on in the season, incredibly attacking. Saliba at 3.6, to me, again, the same as Gabriel, just too cheap. He's in my team. Arsenal defence, expect them to challenge for the league. Great fixture to start off with. Good attacking intent as well. I really like him. Shah at 3.5 million, I think could be good. Again, not to start with because Newcastle's fixtures are not the best, but he actually had the most shots on target for all defenders all last season. Estupiñán at 3.4 million, incredibly attacking left back for Brighton, currently in my draft as well. There's a whole host of Brentford ones we've touched on. So me at 3.1, Rico Henry, very attacking defender at 3 million, and Pinnock at 2.8. Marino at 2.9, we've said for Villa. When he's back in the team, I think he will be very popular. Colwill at 2.9 million for Chelsea as well. It looks like he's going to start the season. So if you are looking for someone from Chelsea, cheap, he's going to start. Tete at 2.6 for Fulham. I don't know how they got all their points, but they're really, really good. Interesting one, we haven't mentioned him yet. Udogie at Spurs. So he's played a lot of pre-season matches for Tottenham. Played again today. 2.6 million for a flying left back. He could be one to keep an eye on. So I'm not saying to start the season with him, especially if you're starting with Vicario, but Udogie at 2.6 million could be one that we all have in our teams in a few weeks' time. And if you're looking to go mega cheap, there are a couple of starting defenders. Baldock at Sheffield United at 2.3 million and Bayer at Burnley at 2.2 million. So quite an array of defenders for you to choose from there through all the ranks. Let's move on to midfielders. Bruno Fernandes, 6.3 million, and Saka. I think they're probably two of the first names on my team sheet. Good fixtures, attacking returns, on penalties, bonus for tackling, especially Bruno. I really like them. As you go a bit further down, I think Maddison at 5.2 could be really, really good. He's looked, he almost played alongside Kane earlier on today. Kane obviously scored the 4 goals in the friendly, but Maddison at 5.2 looks sharp. I think we'll be looking at him a bit later. Odegaard at 5.1. I'm not as keen as him as I was last year, mainly because I think Saka is so good. And Martinelli has come in mega cheap at 4.8. I like Martinelli. The other Arsenal mid, Havertz at 5 million. I think he's probably a wait and see, but if he started at number 9 today, Yehudi Shield, if he does start more at number 9, you can see him being in a lot more teams. Foden at 5 million, I think is probably a bit of a wait and see personally, especially when you've got other players around. We've talked about. We all expected Foden to start again today, and he didn't, and that's always a problem with Foden. Trossard at 4.4. If he can nail a place in the side for Arsenal, I think he'd be absolutely superb. Harvey Barnes scored a couple of goals today for Newcastle, 4.4 million. If he nails the place on that left-hand side, again, not to start with, but he could be good. Diaby, Villa's new signing. I haven't seen a lot of him. Luke, I know you're a massive fan, but apparently he is absolutely wonderful player, and he comes in at just 4 million, basically playing as a second striker, and we do think that Villa are going to have a good season. The fixtures are not the best to start off with, but he could be one again who could be really, really good. Casemiro and Rice, we've mentioned, and also McAllister at 3.8. Eze at 3.8 has been absolutely the star of the show of pre-season, really, for Palace. He's got ridiculous amount of assists. He's got a few goals as well. We'll have a chat about him in a bit, Carl. But Eze at 3.8 could be good. The only problem I foresee with Palace, they don't score an awful lot of goals, I think, is the problem, unless, let's think that'll change. Mitoma at 3.6, March at 3.5. I think, again, they're ridiculously cheap. I think if Brighton perform as well as they did last year, which I think will be hard, but I can't see why they wouldn't. I think they're way too cheap, and one, if not both of them, will probably be in my team in game week 1. Luiz for Aston Villa, which I know Carl likes. So Luke later is going to share us a team of differentials, and Douglas Luiz at 3.5 million scored really well last year, as did Jensen at 3.4. So they again are really, really cheap. Polina's come in at 3.1. Probably, I don't know, I'm not sure if he's going to be able to sort of repeat his feats of last year in terms of the tackles. Kamara has also come in at 3.1, plays a similar role at Villa. Pereira had a fantastic season last year, comes in at 3 million. Tavernier, we mentioned earlier, for Bournemouth, if he can get a good run of games, 2.7 million as an enabler. He was second on that list for the players with limited minutes. So I think if he gets ones, he could be fantastic. I don't want to steal Carl's thunder for the next slide on the next two players, but we have got some mega cheap midfielders who could be tackle monsters. Carl, you mentioned him earlier. Lewis Hall, 2.3 million. He's currently a Chelsea player. If he goes to Palace, he could be absolutely brilliant. And then right down the bargain bucket, Elliot Anderson for Newcastle is only 2.2 million. He has been smashing it up. I think he's got something like 4 goals and 3 assists. Whether he's going to start the season or not, we don't know. I think his minutes, kind of are a problem. And the other player in this mold, 2.1 million, Chukwuemeka, has played a lot of minutes for Chelsea in pre-season. With those last two, we're not sure if they're going to start. That's the longest list. We'll finish off on forwards. Erling Haaland, 8 million. Just get him in your team. Don't even bother messing around. Kane, obviously 7.5. Salah, 7.2. I'm not massively keen on starting with either of them personally, just because I think there's so much value elsewhere. Son at 6.4 is probably a bit expensive. However, if he does go back and and get kind of some of his form from a couple of seasons ago, he could be brilliant. Jesus at 6.3 could be good, but I do prefer players like Martinelli and that, who are like kind of $1.5 million cheaper. He's also probably going to miss the start of the season. Darwin at 6.1. If he nails down the number 9 spot, I think he could be really good at 6.1, especially since he's seen Salah is 7.2. Rashford, I think, is really good value at 5.9. I want to get him in my team. He's currently not in my team, but I want to get him in my team. I think he's going to start the season on fire. They've got fantastic fixtures. He is just a fantastic player, and I really want to get him in my team. And Kunku, I mentioned earlier, he may miss start of the season, 5.6 million. I'm sure he'll be really popular later on down the line. Ollie Watkins, 5.5 million. He's another one I'd like to squeeze in my team. I just think he's going to have a fantastic season. I think he lends himself more into the formats because you get like points for shots on target. He has an awful lot of shots, but I think he could be good in his own right. If Harry Kane leaves, Richarlison comes in at 5.5 million forward, which is a shame. It's a shame he's a forward. I was hoping he'd be a midfielder. I also think he's probably a bit expensive, but 5.5 for a nailed number 9 at Tottenham with players like Son and Maddison either side of him. It could be really good. Wilson is 5 million. I'd probably avoid him at the start. Alvarez is 4.9 million. If Haaland gets injured and Alvarez goes up front at a point in the season, 4.9 million is ridiculous value. And at the moment, Newcastle fans or some I spoke to seem to think that Isaac at 4.8 million could lead the line ahead of Wilson. And when Newcastle's fixtures turn, which is going to roughly around game week maybe 5 onwards, if we are looking for a Newcastle forward, Isaac at 4.8 is mega cheap. And then we go down into the bargain bucket of Mbeumo. We've touched on him earlier, 3.8 million. I think that is a crazy, ridiculous price. Brentford have 4 of the first 6 at home, and their fixtures: Spurs, Fulham, Palace, Bournemouth, Newcastle and Everton. Really good fixture to start off with for Mbeumo. Vissa comes in as well at 3.3. Nicholas Jackson, 3.8 million. I'm not sure I'd start with him personally, just because I think you can get really good value elsewhere. Chelsea's first 2 fixtures, home to Liverpool, away to West Ham, not the best. After that, they are fantastic. So you can wait and see on him potentially. But, at 3.8 million, he could be really good. Evan Ferguson, 3.6 million. Not really sure because obviously you've got Welbeck, you've got Enciso, you've got João Pedro. I'll touch on some of their prices now, but I think they're going to share minutes, it looks like. Everton, we touched on them earlier, they're really good fixtures. Dan Juma at 3.2 million has gone there at the moment. He's been playing pre-season up front. He looks mega cheap, superb player. And the Brighton forwards, João Pedro is 3 million and Enciso is 2.8 million. They're both down as forwards, mega cheap. And the final one on my list is Morris for Luton at 2.9 million, who is their star man, got the most goals and assists last season. That is my long list of players, gents, of my, the players I've picked out. It's a lot of players, but hopefully it gives some people some ideas. I need a drink. Luke, you're grinning. What do you, any thoughts first?
Well, I mean, it's nice of you to read out the entire player.
I did read out the entire player list. I did read out the entire player. There's a lot of midfielders. I think there's about 30 midfielders, but yeah. Carl, I'm able to ask you about Palace, because there's a couple of players, Johnson, the keeper, and Eze are two players I'm maybe interested in. What are your thoughts on those two?
Well, they're both great, obviously, because they play for Palace.
Obviously.
Johnson is like he would be number one if that's the question. I think there's rumours about Gaeta going back to Spain anyway, okay. And we're looking for like another keeper. He made a couple of fantastic saves yesterday. I think he's a really good option to have. Roy is is much more defensively minded. So I'd expect more clean sheets this year than last year. And when Roy's sort of come in, just the shape of the team's great. Eze, I love the guy. He's such a baller on the ball. But I don't know. Sometimes I think the hype of what's going around on Twitter and everything else may be too much. It's like he's some Paul Gascoigne. And he's not. He's a great player. He should be in our team, and he's going to reach greatness in years to come. But we aren't a team that scores millions of goals. Yeah. We've got Elise's injured at the moment, and he may be off. Zaha's gone. So like when they're all playing together, they're all great to watch. And you had all those other players on the pitch that they had to sort of like pin down. Whereas now they'd be missing, and it's just Eze. Everybody's hearing about him, so defences will be watching out. So we don't score the most goals. I would tread with caution. Yep. And lower your expectations on what you may expect from him. But in terms of watching him as a footballer, he's wonderful. But as a fantasy asset, I don't know. He may do good, but he may not. And we've got some other players coming in. We've just bought a Brazilian who's meant to be quite good.
Yeah, I saw that, the youngster, isn't it?
So, whether they join up and how long Elise is out for, assuming he stays, or if Hall comes, you may get a bit more fluidity up front. But we need to create gaps, and then he will run into them and score goals. But great player. Shame about his injury. Otherwise, he'd probably have gone already. So I'll enjoy one last season, I expect, with him, because he's destined to go elsewhere, I'm sure.
Superb, Carl. Thanks for that insight. Luke, have I... you said I've read out the whole list. Have I missed anyone, or have I just read out the whole list?
I'm just trying to work out if you did. I think... Did you mention Nakamba? I don't know.
No, because that's coming up next. Don't mention Nakamba. That's coming up.
Yeah, there was one other that you didn't mention. I know I'll touch on the differentials, but Raul Jimenez has gone from Wolves to Fulham. Yeah. And Mitrovic is looking almost certain that he's gone. So if I'm assuming, it's going to go 50-50 with him, but he's someone that's very interesting. He's 3.8 as well, so very, very good value there. So I think, yeah, other than that, yeah, you mentioned
every player in the game. Carl, you've done a bit of analysis on the promoted teams, and there's a couple of players in particular who we think could do really, really well. Do you want to talk us through what you found?
Sure. So what I've got done here is I've looked at is it FB Ref, and I've just looked at all the players from the promoted teams, and listed them in order of what their price is, how many games they played, how many times they played 90 minutes, goals, assists, etc. So when they're on the pitch, who scores what percentage of goals, how many tackles they've got if they're midfielder, yellow cards, red cards, etc. There's at least two players that sort of stand out when I look through the list. Well, the first player was at Sheffield United, who had quite a lot of tackles, 68 after 42 games. Is it Nandili?
Yeah, he's left now though, Carl. He's off to bloody Marseille, sadly.
He's gone off to Marseille, so he was going to be in my team because
when
he played, he scored. He had over 20% of the goals,
Yeah.
or XG, and over the team's XG, and over 10% of the assists, as well as all the tackles. So he would have been yeah. Sorry, I should have sort of said I produced these slides a week or a couple of weeks ago. What I've done also is I've highlighted in yellow some of the high numbers of tackles. So Brownhill of Burnley, 2.8. He had 91 tackles from 40 games last year. So he's quite a consistent player. He also chips in with goals. He had 12.4% XG of the team's XG when he played, and nearly 15% of the assists. So he's near enough involved in 25% of goal creation for Burnley.
On fire in pre-season as well.
Oh, yeah. So he's a good pick at 2.8, and he had 91 tackles. Next one down the list is Oliver Norwood. Again, he chips in a little bit of goals, just over 5%. He's only 2.4 million. Very, very cheap. 16% of the assists, so he has some attacking output, and 102 tackles last year, out of 39 games, which is, again, very high. So when we remember the previous tackle slides, I think it was only Casado who got above 100, except for Felinia, who was like miles ahead of everybody else. So those were the capture. I did look at Norwood a couple of years ago. I think his number of tackles was lower when he was in the Premier League, about 60. So much lower, much lower down. And on the bottom right hand corner, I put in named Camber of Luton. He's 2.5. He was added to the game after I made the original list, and he had 62 tackles from 16 games. Now, the interesting thing about this is, well, he must have come into the January transfer window, because those 16 games were the last 16 of the season, I think. So what I tend to do is, when I look at the charts, I cut out people with few minutes, because they may just make a few substitutes appearance. But for him, because I heard other people sort of say, no, everything about him, I actually specifically went back to just make sure it wasn't via injury or he got rotated in the team. And he's 62 tackles from 16 games. Well, 32 goes 24, and he's going to be the second highest tackler in the league if he kept up that performance.
Yeah.
Now, some people say, oh, you expect more tackles when you go from the Championship to the Premier League, which may or may not be true. Because I heard someone sort of say that in one of the pre-season games, Luton looked rubbish and couldn't get anywhere near the ball. So you may be able to tackle people in the Championship, doesn't automatically mean you're going to get more, because you may not, the technique of the elite clubs, you just won't get close to them. So it's not like a shoo-in that he's going to be Captain Marvel. But the early indications are that he's going to be one of the key enablers of the season.
Nakamba, Norwood, and Brownhill in all look really good options, and we haven't mentioned any of those so far on top of everyone else. So Brownhill 2.8 million, Norwood 2.4 million. How cheap is that? And Nakamba 2.5. Take your pick, as alongside all the other ones we've done. So thank you, Carl. That is absolutely superb stuff, and this is the kind of analysis which helped identify players like Polinia, Conor Gallagher from a couple of years ago, Carl, things like this. So really, really good stuff. Thank you for that. Let's just have a quick look at some at the ownership stats so far, just before we've got a million questions to get through. Hopefully we've answered most of them already, but let's have a look at some ownership stats. The reason I like looking at the ownership stats is last year it kind of messed me up, and I do take ownership very, very seriously in every other game. I don't tend to in Telegraph, and I don't really know why, but I do think it's gonna help me a bit this year with a couple of 50-50s. Erling Haaland, as we expect, 76% owned. Just go with Haaland. Don't even bother taking the risk of not going with him. Saka is 47% owned as well, which I think is justified. I think he's fantastic. The next two are interesting. Trippier is 35% owned, and McAllister 31. Now, I don't think either of them a good pick to start the season. It's obviously based on last year's points because both of them scored incredibly well last year for their prices. I'm comfortable not starting with either of those personally. Saliba's next at 29. He's going to be in my team. He's mega cheap. And Mitoma. So I did have March in my team, and I was tossing up between him and Mitoma. Now Mitoma's 27% owned. I can't even see March. He's way down for whatever reason. I quite fancy the double up on them. But this has probably helped me pick Mitoma over March, just for the fact that it's a pure coin toss, right? But if March does kick on and Mitoma doesn't, and I've got him, all well and good. But the problem I had last year was keeping up almost with the template at times, and that's why I was too slow on Arsenal, too slow on Newcastle, and that's why I was the same as you, Carl. I had a really good finish, but I struggled all the way through the season to make any kind of inroads, and almost my rush at the end was a bit too late. So these are things which may help. Mitoma 27, Estupiñán 27 as well, Rashford 27, Trent 27. So currently I've only got room in my team for either Rashford or Trent. I'm fancying Rashford, I got to be honest. Martinelli 21, Salah only at 20, which is very low. Pope 20, Odegaard 17, Bruno 16. I'm quite surprised that is so low. Ben Mee at 16. We mentioned him a few times, obviously, because he scored so many points. Kevin De Bruyne 16% at 6.7. I just think that's way too high. Foden 5 million, 15%. Gross 13. Eze 13 as well. A lot of people like his preseason form. And Gabriel is cheap as well at 12%. Worth noting, Harry Kane isn't on that list. And these are the things. So these are things which kind of the point I'm trying to make on this, I suppose. Players like Salah at 20%, Kane at, I think he's 12% owned. These players are normally 30, 40, 50, 60% owned. They're not as scary now not to own as they were before. And that has definitely helped me feel a lot more comfortable with my selection of my initial team. I know it's trendy to say that you shouldn't look at ownership. You should pick who you think are going to score the most points. Luke, how does ownership affect your decisions in general fantasy and in Telegraph?
Probably the wrong person to ask, because I don't worry that much about it. That I'd say that with a caveat, right? So Haaland and Saka, they're just too highly owned. But once you get below that, I actually see ownership. It's a bit of a ball and chain as far as I'm concerned. I did a really interesting experiment, probably about 8-9 years ago. And I looked at two teams, and I went one which was completely differential and one that was all the main picks. And actually, at the end of the season, they were about 20 points apart, right? And that was so. At the end of the day, if you get it's all that matters is the points. But it depends what you want to do, and if your main rivals are there and you fancy that you're going to be better than them, use 2 or 3 players to kind of outmaneuver them, those 2 or 3. But I always go back to my Stephen Malbronk. I probably talk like a broken record on him, but nobody ever used to own him. Best value player in the game, probably. I mean, I'm sure you'd find a couple of players that are better value in history, but it was just brilliant because nobody ever had him, and every time he fired. So I think ownership, it is great, but it's I don't get bogged down by it. There's loads of people on that list, like Mitoma. I think there's better value players. I think there'll be players at 2.6 to 2.9 that will score as many points. I think he's brilliant as a player, really do. But I think there are other players that will keep pace with him. And if you've got them for 500,000 less, then I guess you've got, instead of Trent, you've got Salah instead of Trent. Salah will probably outscore Trent over the season. So if you can make that extra thing. So I'm not weighed down by it. It is important for those really big ones, because if Haaland fires and you don't own him, you're in trouble. Now, the other caveat with that in Telegraph is, without the captain, one player firing doesn't ruin your season like it does in Sky or FPL. Haaland scores a hat trick, you don't own him, suddenly 50 points behind. Like, that's a real problem. That's not a problem in TFF. Like, so you can easily make that. And I think you made that point. You had a couple of times last season where you were like, oh no, but you made up those points. So it's important to a degree, and you don't want to have a complete team of differentials really. But at the end of the day, if your players are scoring the same points, it's a game over 38 weeks. So if your players are scoring the same time and use your transfers wisely, you'll be all right. But that's me. And I know that's not the same for everyone.
No, really good points there, Luke. Carl, what's your thoughts on ownership?
I'm very similar to Luke. I sort of like understand the concept of it, and I understand why people use it. But if I did want to go with Haaland and I didn't think he was value, and I went with an alternative, I always think, well, if Haaland goes off on one and I don't, I just live with the consequences, like everyone had him. But the flip side is, if he has a poor run of form, and my alternative was hot, then I jump across the whole pack. So I could go from a millionth under one scenario or first in the other. Well, I don't care, anywhere between 10th and a millionth. All the positions are the same. First is a nice position to be in. So I don't let it weigh down on me. I just make the best decisions, and I live with it. And I just have to understand when it goes against me, don't get too upset about it, because that's the game. I play what I think is good. Saying that, I will look at ownership, not to pick players as such, like the top players, but in case there was somebody on the list that just didn't cross my mind.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, if Nang, the Luton player, was on that list, and I think Uzi, I may go and have a look. But all the others about, and it's like Trippier's up there. Is it Trent? I don't think that they're worth their money, especially at the beginning. And I don't think Trippier's worth that value for the whole season. So just because loads of people pick him, well, that's good. I'd hope to have an advantage on an alternative pick. So that's where I am on that. I don't blame people for doing it, and you've got to play what's most comfortable and keeps your mind in a good place.
Yep. Thank you, gents. Really, really good chat there on ownership. We got so many questions. There's no way in the world we're going to be able to get through all of them at all. But we've answered a lot of them. But we will try. I'll try and pick out a few themes. And if I do ask a question, gents, could we try and give some short, sharp answers? Because otherwise we'll be all bloody night. The first one is off Daniel Moody. Top three premiums are Haaland, Fernandes, and Saka. I'd also like Salah. What is your best item for starting with all four, and what is your best item for starting without Salah? So this is, and there's also another one actually around Kane off Tim Barry. So let's answer these two together. Haaland is probably a shoo-in, right? Not only because of anything other than he's the best striker in the world. He's going to score however many goals again. I haven't got Salah or Kane currently in my teams, and my arguments are that I don't think their fixtures are too great to start off with. We don't, obviously know if Kane's going to be there, and I think there's a lot more value players like Saka, like Bruno, etc. There, so that's my argument for not having them. I will have a price point to be able to get to them, I think, or to get reasonably close to them. But I'm not scared of them in Telegraph. That's my argument. Carl, Kane and Salah, do we need that second one, and if so, which one?
No, I'm not going with either of them. Very similar reasons. Fixtures are difficult for both of them. Only 3 home games out of 8. Quite a bit of they're expensive, and there's quite a lot of unknowns within the teams. So Spurs new manager, some new players coming in. Are they still going to rock, or is it going to take a bit of time for them to bed in? And very similar with Liverpool, different midfield. Will they start dominating? Will they not? What's the rotation up front? Even though I don't expect Salah to be rotated, it's the others will be. And it's like, how well do they all link up? And, that will just take time to bed in. So that's an argument more against both of those two. So, yeah.
Thank you. And Luke, are either of them in your team at the moment?
Yeah, I've got Salah. The reason is that I want the ability to go to any player. I know
Yeah.
Kane's a little bit more expensive. I've got that in the bank, but there's no way in I'm starting with Kane just in case we don't, he doesn't move until the game starts. I'm not wasting a transfer. So I've got Salah for team structure, which I know Paul McNulty who won Sky last year. He's like, have a price point in every position that you can move around very easily. So with all the budget enablers, and you'll see probably in my team, I'm very happy with my four in midfield. Salah could be Bruno at the start of the season. It could be Salah, but I'm having one of them. But I'm not spending the extra cash anywhere because I want to be able to get to Kane if he stays. And I do think Liverpool have got quite a good run of fixture for the offense, not necessarily for the defense.
Yeah.
And as far as I'm concerned, from an FPL perspective, Salah is still the second best player in the game after Haaland. So with the budget, I've got Salah because I can move, and I think he's the second best point scoring player in the game.
Yep, that's a really good argument for, indeed, definitely. Aman Tatlow, who had a fantastic season. I think he finished 9th last year. And Ollie Poole have asked a question around formation, kind of optimal formation. Aman asks around 3 heavy hitters up front, and Ollie also asks which players you think are overpriced. So, Luke, optimal formation for this year?
Yeah, well, shout out to him. There was a mini TFF meetup, so I met him a couple of weeks ago. And I know he went 3 heavy hitters from memory pretty much the whole of last season. So I think he came 9th. So yes, there's a good argument for it. I personally don't subscribe to it because I just think the forwards are overpriced. I think there's a couple of midfielders that the price is being pushed a bit. So Saka, I think historically would have come in at 5 million rather than 5.7.
Yeah.
But I just think the premium to have a forward is just not worth it. And when you can get, a player who gets 140 points for 3 million in another place, doesn't really bother me that they get 180 for 6 million, 7 million. I'm like, well, get the money elsewhere. But he finished 9th, and that's incredible. And I haven't got remotely close to that for decades, literally. So I think there is an argument for it if you've got value everywhere else. But on face value, bar Haaland, all the other forwards, I don't think are as good a value as most of the other positions for the expensive ones anyway.
Carl, thoughts on on structure for this season?
Well, I think I mentioned before, normally I've always been 5 at the back. This year, it's completely flipped. And to me, I think optimal is going to be 3 at the back, 3-5-2 or 3-4-3, which I'll be going for. And in many ways, I'm really pleased because it's much more fun, people scoring goals. So I'll be in a happy place and following my optimal, what I consider an optimal strategy. But I think it's very even this year, all the formations. And what's going to be key is where you think you're going to find the budget enablers, which is very similar to what Luke sort of says. But wherever that you find them, and that's where you have a budget, and then you just sort of splash it out on the most expensive players elsewhere. And I think if you've got 8 million, well, there is no 8 million defender. So it's like most expensive defenders, 5 million, and you've got 3 billion in your bank, or 8 million forward who scores more, go for the forward. And that's where I'd sort of say 3-5-2, 3-4-3, but it really does depend on where you find your enablers. And most formations will be quite good once you based around that.
Yeah, I'm currently on a 4-5-1, but I think after we've looked at all this, I think a 3-5-2 is definitely the way I'm gonna go. I think maybe 3-4-3, but they would be cheaper strikers. I think I don't think sticking all your money up front. Personally, I know it worked last year, but I think in a normal-ish season, it's not for me really.
Yeah. Can I add one more thing? So I won't be starting with 3 up front because I never do. I suspect most people, because there are so many good priced people, once you found all those enablers, I think a lot of people will be able to get to 3 premium strikers up front because you'll have found all those enablers.
That's a really good point.
I don't think it's the right formation at the start. I personally think 4-4-2 or 4 or 5 in midfield, and so it's either 4-4-2 or 3-5-2 is where I would start. But I think a lot of teams will end up with 3 really heavy hitters, and it may be that one of them is a midfielder. So Bruno, and Rashford interchangeable and people like that. But yeah, so I think, but yeah, that's where we'll all end up with a lot of expensive players because they're up front, because there's so many budget enablers, I think, again this year.
We had a couple of questions. We had one off Ollie and one also off FF Thinker around worst value picks. So I think I'll start this one. I'll go for this could come back to bite me massively, but I'll go for Trippier and Trent this season. Would be it's hard to go. I normally go for maybe the expensive forwards, but I can't see Trippier and Trent over the course of the season being good value. I'm sure they'll have their spells. I'm sure they'll score points, but in terms of value, which is what they're asking here, not for me. Luke, who's your 1 or 2 top players who you don't think will be offer value?
Trent, as I talked about earlier, I think that if he plays more in midfield, I think that makes him less valuable in this game, more valuable in Sky, interestingly. Son is the other one. Now I may change my mind on that if Kane goes, but he's 6.3 or 6.4 from memory. If he has another phenomenal season, but he's got to be hitting 200 plus points to justify that sort of price tag, and I just don't think he's going to get that. He should, after last season, they just haven't readdressed his price. He should be back down at sort of high 4s, low 5s, not at 6.3 million. So yeah, he'll be the one, I think, for me.
And the same for you, Carl? Worst?
Yeah, well, before I say the worst, I just want to disagree with Trent. Basically, one of Luke's points about being worse being in midfield, I don't think that's correct. He's much better as an asset in midfield because tackling does not count for defenders. And you sort of said about Gross, or who was in midfield. Gross may be better than Trent because he's moving back and therefore may get more tackles. Whether that's true or not is a different thing. But for Trent itself, it makes no difference because it doesn't get the bonus. And therefore, by moving in midfield, he has at least a more attacking output. Who cares if he can defend or not? It's like, can Liverpool keep the clean sheets? But his attacking output should improve, and therefore he should be better. So I don't think Trent. I think mine would be Trippier for the reasons we mentioned. He had a phenomenal season last year. Secondly, one thing we haven't mentioned is new teams in Europe. Newcastle being one of them, have they got the squad depth, and they may be a bit more stretched. Same with Brighton, a certain degree with Arsenal. The 2 forwards I would expect will be disappointing against their price will be Sonny because he's priced so high, and Darwin, even though you sort of said I don't think his minutes will be enough. I think there'll be too much rotation, and at that price won't be a very good value pick.
Thank you very much. Good stuff. Matt Woolley asks about Brighton players. How many are we going to start off with? I think I've got 2 in my draft, but I think there's certainly 3 or 4. I think Steele, Estupiñán, March and Mitoma personally are looking really good and really, really cheap. Anything else on Brighton at all, gents?
Not. I think those are the ones that cover it. I mean, Evan Ferguson, when his points when he plays is really, really quite high, and he's pretty cheap. So he's very much one to watch and very low owned. I'll come on to that later, but he maybe depends who they sign. But again, I think the Europe thing. So I'm not heavy on Brighton because of the Europe thing, and I just don't know where they'll come. And I don't want to waste transfers if they start rotating.
That's fair. And yourself, Carl, Brighton?
Yeah, I've just got the one at the moment. Great players. Nice bit of squad depth. Don't know who's going to get the most minutes.
Yeah.
But yeah, then it'd be a very good team if you knew which ones to have. Ferguson, yeah, great striker. But of course they got Pedro coming in and Welbeck. and Europe, who's going to play in Europe and everything else. So yeah, good team, but not that many in my draft.
We've got some questions off Mark Cram, a good one. He says, who are the top 3 essential picks? Obviously, don't like the word essential. So who are the first 3 names on your team sheet? Carl, who were the first 3 names on your team sheet?
I think Haaland was the first. I'm trying to think who I had. I would sort of say, well, just Haaland. Everybody else, it all depends on your budget. Yeah, it's Haaland, because the other names I may come up with, they're not even in my team. I can't even say them. And the ones that I have got, I think Caldwell could be fantastic, and is, but that is a bit risky.
Yeah. Luke, who were the first 3 players in your team sheet?
So Haaland and Saka, and then it depends if you want me to say before I looked at the prices of players, because the third choice was then instantly Salah, without looking at the prices, but then he very quickly came out. The player there's 2 players, I would say, well, in fact 3, that have consistently been there in all my drafts. So Saliba, I think, is very well priced. I think he's the best priced Arsenal defender. I think it's Timber that's coming in at 3. I think he's 3 million actually. Could be an absolute steal if he comes in. I think he played left back today, because I thought he was a right back. So that was, but yeah, he could be a really interesting one. I know Carl's saying he's not there, but I've got a few Palace fans who just don't stop talking about him. And tail end of last season, he did brilliantly for me in a number of formats. And the one that is a bit of a surprise is Diaby, but since he's signed for Villa, I've watched him on YouTube and seen a bit of stats on him. I know a few of the other pods. I know Adam was talking him up as well the other day on the Green Arrow podcast, for example. But yeah, a lot of Villa fans are really, really excited about him. And I think he's going to play as a striker, but he's as a midfielder, and he's 4 million. So he could get tackles, but he's playing further forward. So it's probably, as a Saliba and Diaby are the sort of differential-ish ones that were straight on there, that weren't Haaland or Salah or Saka.
I've completely missed Timber, and he's 3.1 million, 7% owned. Well, that solves a problem I've got, which I'll touch on later. I think my 3 were probably Haaland, Saliba. I would probably put Saka after that, but since Nakamba, I always look for the enabler. I always look for that really, a cheap tackle monster you can just put in, set and forget for the season. I think Nakamba could be that, though I do like the look of Norwood, and now you've put Brownhill in there as well. Carl, he's interested me as well, but I always try and look for that. But yeah, Saliba, Haaland, and the enabler. Good stuff there. Fernando asks about Vicario. Yeah, absolutely fantastic option. And I think we've answered most of the questions now with that, actually, which is quite good. Always ask you this, Jim. We haven't been asked this in the questions, actually, but in terms of transfer management, obviously we're looking at a bit of a more normal season this season for the first time in, what is it, four seasons now, maybe. In terms of transfer management, how many transfers would you hope to have left at Christmas? Carl, the sacred question: how many would you hope to have left?
40 would be nice.
40 would be nice, realistically.
It's really hard. So what's that up to? About, that's halfway season. I between 25 and 30, I think would be good. I'm hoping, of course, a lot of it will depend on injuries, but yeah, I'd say 25 to 30 would be something I'd aim and hope for. But obviously there are going to be injuries and other things that come up and that may throw the spanner in the works. But that is my aim for this year.
Luke, what
Oh,
was
and
that? Oh, sorry, Carl, go on.
so I was going to say, yeah, you're right about. So I was trying to think what happened last year to make all the extra fixtures. And of course, we had the World Cup, but that shouldn't really have impacted that much. It was it's more the death of the Queen that caused the major disruption. So we don't know if this is going to be normal because Charlie's quite old.
We do.
You know, but there are other things that could happen.
Of course.
That's what I mean.
Luke, how many transfers you up to left to Christmas realistically?
So I want to use 5 to 8 is my aim. I'm aiming for 5. Last year I got really, really close to that. And so yeah, I think that's doable. But you got to be a little bit lucky. So I've got 5 that will be moving the team around to find those enablers early, and then 3 to 5 additional ones for injuries or major sort of fixture swings and things like that. But yeah, the aim for me is up until Christmas or first half of the season to use as few as possible. So I'm with Carl. Like, if I can do 0, I will do 0.
I used 6 or 7 by the World Cup last, which is obviously November. It's worth mentioning, obviously 6 or 7. So I think if we push that forward onto Christmas, probably between about 10 and 12, because obviously there's the thing of of keeping the team in good shape as well. It's not just around transfer preservation, obviously. So I would hope that by Christmas, so it's halfway through the season, I would hope that I wouldn't have used any more than maybe 12, which I think would put us in a really, really good shape to attack the FA Cup and the massive fixture swings we always see in the second half of the season. Last 2 questions come from Simon. He asks about what learning from last season we're looking to take into this season. Luke, what did you learn? What have you learned recently that you will look to take into next season?
I'm going to, I talked about it earlier, but the reality is that team that was 10 or if not 12 million cheaper performed almost as well as my 50 million budget team and just gave me considerably more flexibility. So the learning from last year into this year is I am either structuring my team to enable any move with one move very easily, or leaving loads in the bank so that I can make multiple moves that just upgrades every time in that first half of the season.
Good stuff. Carl, have you got a learning that you're going to take into this season?
It's always a tricky one. Just quickly reflecting back from last year, I think every season seems to be unique. What I learned from last year was like Brighton just had a huge run of games and great form, and to be able to sort of like having the transfers in the hand to take advantage of that. Whether that will happen again this year, you don't know, but that'd be my main learning, is take advantage of things if they come up in the later part of the year, and that's why you save your transfers.
Okay, and I think my learning was I'm very stubborn sometimes. I was stubborn on Mahrez and Vardy in 2016, and I was stubborn on Newcastle and Arsenal last year. I didn't believe they were going to keep going. I didn't believe, and that obviously cost me massively. So I say, even though I had a decent finish, I could have had a better finish if I'd have looked at what's going on around me. Not be so stubborn. So I think that's going to be mine. Simon also chucked in a question. He says, cheeky question. Do Luke and Carl think that they can beat Fergie this season? And if so, how? Carl, sorry to put you on the spot. Can I ask you that question?
How?
And you can't log into my bloody team and change my players either.
I was just going to sort of say I was going to hack your machine. I don't know. But I think the best way to be able to beat you, Fergie, is to log on to the Fantasy Football Hub every week and just copy your moves until the very last week of the season, and then make a change.
What a wonderful idea, Carl.
And therefore that increases my odds of beating you, and that's the only way I can see that happen.
Are you going to beat me this year, Carl?
I haven't seen your team yet, but I do like my team, the way it's starting, and I think is quite strong. So I think I've got a good chance of
Superb.
beating you this year, Fergie.
Luke, are you going to beat me this year?
Probably, yeah.
Probably, yeah. So I'm very understanding. Probably, yeah, absolutely. No, that's fair enough. Luke, have you got one final question? Oh, sorry, yeah. What rule change would you like? I missed that. That's a really good question. That's off Dennis. Dennis says, got the rules and pricing spot on this season. Made team selection considerably harder compared to previous years. Wonder what you guys think of the rules and pricing, and if you could change or bring in one rule to TFF, what would it be? Luke, you seem prepared for this one.
Yeah, it's quite a quick one for me. It would be tackles being in the defence. I like the fact that they don't do the passing like Sky, because I don't want TFF to become the same as another game, because it's got its place. But yes, I would love tackles to be in defence. Well, in fact, and forwards as well, because there is the odd forward that did get tackles every now and then. I think that would be great. The one rule change I don't want to ever come into TFF is captains. I think they need to never, ever, ever do it. That would be, I know that's a bonus answer, but yeah, please never in captains. But yeah, tackles, please.
What about yourself, Carl? If you had to change something about the game?
Well, I would go for tackles. I don't like tackles in defence. I really do like it as midfielders, because it opens it up. Tackles is just defender's job, and it just benefits a few defenders much more than others. Maybe shots on target, if I was going to do anything, just to give a bit more a bit more enjoyment when you watch it. People like shots on target. So for strikers, maybe for the whole all three of them, all four positions, because you get goalkeeper get dodge shot, and maybe 0.3 or half a point every 2 shots on target.
I quite like that. I think that would have been my word, or something like that. I know Dream Team this year have changed their whole game, and some of the things I'm excited about. So they've got things for tackling and things, but they've also got points for all positions for shots on target, and they've also got additional points for chances created as well. I quite like that. I used to love the old the contribution of TFF. I thought I thought it was really unique, the whole assist and the assister, but I do like the thought of some kind of points for creativity. But I would agree with Dennis. I think overall the pricing has been good. I probably may have bumped the Arsenal defenders up just a little bit again, and I think Vicario at 2.5 could be a bit of a game breaker, but I think in general he's done a really good job.
Yeah, I must sort of say that I played some games before where you just get too many different types of points for interceptions, points for headers, and that just sort of it then becomes a job, to sort of figure it all out, and you don't want that. But the simple things, the tackle for midfielders, I think it's a great, really
superb,
fantastic. I just do like it as it is. If I was going to add anything, it'd just be shots on target.
Yep.
Yeah, the creating chances could be, or key assists or whatever it was. In terms of pricing, like every game, I think pricing's great here, but I do wish that they would have everybody priced as if they were near enough a starter.
That's just what I was going to say. Like Vicario, like Alvarez, because as soon as they go in the team, it just it kills their positions, doesn't it?
Yeah, and then it's like who knows who's going to start, and then it's like there's suddenly like the game's broken.
Yeah,
if once you've got 2 of them, that's the only thing I'd sort of change on the pricing.
Yeah. Really good points there. Thank you, and thank you everyone as usual for all your questions. Right, we've got 12 minutes left, gents, before the 2-hour mark. So let's try and rifle through our teams. Firstly, Luke, you've got a differential 11 who you think could be good value. Do you want to run through it for us?
Yeah, so the key criteria for this was under 5% ownership. So Vicario, 3.5% ownership. Colwell, All Metal, he's gone up a lot. Actually, it was 2% when I picked him. He's almost at 5% now. So James Tarkowski at Everton at 3.1. They've got a nice run of fixtures, and he gets the odd goal, so it could be a nice little just price enabler can move him down after a few fixtures. Moreno at Villa, you mentioned him. So he's 1.5%. A couple more Villa boys, use the theme here. So Diaby, almost at 5%. But yeah, 4 million. Louise, who actually really under the radar, hardly talked about him. So he's only 2.2% owned, got 142 points last season, and I fancy him to kick on a little bit, actually. And I know the Villa boys on podcasts have talked about it. Brownhill, we've mentioned, again, really low owned. Casemiro, we've really low owned. Nakamba, great price. And then I've got Jimenez and Ferguson up front. I wouldn't start with either of them. I did have Bueno up front, and I got him at 4%, and he's shot up to almost 10% owned in the last week. There are a couple of other notable mentions. So Bowen at West Ham, Barnes at Newcastle, and I think it's Fernandez, the Chelsea midfielder, who gets tackles and stuff. I mean, he started on fire when he came in. So there's a few others in that range, but I think there's loads of these nice low-owned players who will keep tabs. So coming back to that ownership point earlier, if you have this team, they'll do all right. If they all play, they'll all get decent points. And I'm just looking at, I've got 14.6 million in the bank for that team. Wow. So easy upgrades.
I'm definitely gonna have one team with, I'm gonna have Brownhill, Nakamba, and Norwood, and then I'm gonna have like Haaland, Salah, Kane, and then a cheap defence, just as like my fourth or fifth, just to see what happens. But thank you, Luke. That is absolutely superb. A team full of value there. So absolutely great stuff. Thank you for that. Carl, we've got your latest draft up on screen now. I hope it's your latest draft. Do you want to run through it for us?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure which order, how I should run through it. I'll just go. I'll select the 3-4-3. Okay, so I've got. Is it? Sorry, my eyes are a bit dodgy. The Spurs keeper,
Vicario. Yeah.
Vicario. Yeah. So I've got him in goal. Cheap price, 2.5. In defence, I've taken a little bit of I think Colwell will start, so I've gone for him and Chilwell. Chelsea have great opening fixtures, and Pinnock of Brentford to complete my back three. In midfield, I've got Saka, Bruno, Casemiro, and Mintonto of Brighton as my four. And then up front, I've got Nicholas Jackson for Chelsea, Rashford, and Haaland.
Really nice team. You fancy a fast start for Chelsea then, Carl?
Well, Chelsea, I think have got great fixtures, eight fixtures off the bench to start with, and that will just give me time to look elsewhere. And yeah, I think Chelsea can be good. Chilwell's looked fantastic in pre-season. Colwell, I think he's okay for the first 2 or 3 games. Is it Bashard or whatever it is?
Yeah.
He mentioned earlier. I thought I heard that he's injured for a little while, and then it's going to be a choice between those two. But I hope Colwell will prove his ability, and Jackson up front. I got that from you putting in the Hub's WhatsApp group mentioning Jackson, and it's like, yeah, I saw him. I didn't realise how cheap he was. They got great fixtures. It looks like he's going to start. So yeah, and that just like frees up the funds to put in all the premiums that you've heard me rattle off.
Absolutely fantastic team, Carl. Luke, do you want to talk us through your team?
Yeah, fairly similar. It's changed a lot, actually. So I've got Vicario in goal, Estepunian, I think very good value there. I've got Saliba and Gabriel in the middle. I may look at Timber for Gabriel, but because I didn't expect him to start today, so that's given me a bit of a question mark. And then I've got Chilwell, he's the least nailed position, but 4.7 million, and I've got I think almost 1 in the bank, so he can become a lot of players. I've got Diaby at Villa at 4 mil, Saka, Nakamba, and Eze. I do fancy Eze, and then I've got Salah for the hop around position, and Haaland, like everybody. I mean, it's a 10-man game now, isn't it?
It is indeed, and then another Vicario there as well. Really nice team there. Nakamba in, good stuff. Can't argue with that. This is my team at the moment, but this has helped me this podcast has helped me because I feel now that I know what I'm going to do. So I'm currently on a 4-5-1. I've gone for Vicario as well. Instantly, we've all gone for him. I've got Gabriel and Saliba, but I may downgrade Gabriel. I think 3.9. I may go down to. I could go to Timber if I think he's going to play, or maybe a Brentford defender, something like that. I'm not 100% sure yet, but I needed a bit more money to do the move I want to do now. Estupinian, I think I'm going to start with him at 3.4. Very attacking. Brighton, excellent fixture to start off with. Now I have got Trent, but it was a bit of like a placeholder because I wasn't sure about him. I'm not, and I'm still not. But what I'm going to do now with the money I saved from Gabriel, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to check. So I needed 0.3 million. So I think I'm going to go from Trent to Rashford. So that's I'm now going to be in a 3-5-2. Midfield, Saka, Nakamba, Bruno Fernandes, Martinelli, and Mitoma. So four really attacking ones there. They've all got excellent fixtures to start with as well, with Nakamba as the enabler, as I mentioned, Haaland and Rashford up front. So that is my team as it stands. Lots of hoping Arsenal and Man United in particular get off to a really fast start, and Brighton as well. Actually, it hasn't got much money in the bank. I haven't got the hop around to be able to get to Salah or Kane, which is a concern, and maybe it is something that makes me go from maybe Gabriel down to someone like Colwell, just as an example, to save the million, so then I can hop around between Bruno and Salah and Kane or whatever else. But reasonably happy with that at the moment. Think it should get off to a good start, and and we'll see from there. But excellent work there, chaps. Some really good teams going on there. And that is it for us for this podcast, this pre-season TFF podcast. Thank you so much, gents. Really enjoyed that. I think it's one of the best ones we've done, actually. Luke and Carl, fantastic stuff. And thank you so much, as usual, to our loyal watchers and listeners for their great questions and comments, and interaction on Twitter and in the Hub WhatsApp groups and everything. We really do appreciate it. Luke, any final words, and where can we find you?
Final words, I think. I'm interested whether you actually invested in a sunbed with your dream team winnings with that jibe at the start of the pod. So, I wouldn't have spent that on that myself, but fair play. You reach me generally on Twitter at FBL _equation. It's my handle there. It's probably the easiest way of getting me.
Lovely stuff. Thank you so much, Luke. And Carl, thank you so much for all the prep, for all the slides, all the data, magnificent stuff. Any final words, and where can people get hold of you?
Yeah, on Twitter at Darkest Jungle. Final words, not really, just can't wait for the season to start, really. And I hope everybody has I've enjoyed this podcast and have an enjoyable season ahead.
Yeah, definitely.
We'll all have bad moments, but try to forget the bad moments and just live the highs and enjoy those as much as you can.
Final words from me: save your transfers. Save your transfers. You need lots of transfers the second half of the season. You don't win mini leagues in the first half of the season. You're winning them in the second half. Those are my final words. My handle on Twitter is at @FFH_Fergie. This video recording will be on the Fantasy Football Hub Sky and TFF YouTube channel, with the podcast versions available on all major podcast platforms. If you liked what you watched, please press the like button. Remember to subscribe to the channel at the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. If you enjoyed your listen, please rate the podcast and leave a comment. Our handles on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok are at FFH_HQ. So please drop us a follow and feel free to ask us any questions. Our website is fantasyfootballhub.co.uk, where you'll find everything you need for fantasy football all under one roof, including player comparison tools, the fixture ticker, Opta stats, top player team reveals, and so much more. You can also get your FPL team rated for free. Just go to fantasyfootballhub.co.uk. Sky Planning Maestro Ian Parrin has built a TFF transfer planner for Hub members, and for premium members, pro members, We now have dedicated TFF WhatsApp groups, which we chat everything Telegraph, and I do voice notes in once a week. I'll probably do twice a week this week, where I give my latest musings on the world of Telegraph and plays I'm looking at and thought. But I'll be doing that every week throughout the season. So if you want to do that, look at the Pro membership on Fantasy Football Hub. All the links are in the description below to sign up. We wish you the very, very best of luck for the start of the season. And we'll see you in a few months, hopefully, with a pocket full of transfers. Goodbye for now.